Hey guys, welcome back. Travis Flaherty here, co-founder of Trusted Smart Chain. Today we're going to talk about the Genius Act, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on from a regulatory compliance standpoint right now in the world of cryptocurrency. Now, let's go all the way back to where it started. 2009, there's this lack of trust in centralized institutions, and all of a sudden, somebody named Satoshi Nakamoto comes out and introduces Bitcoin. We have no idea who it was. Is it a person? Is it a country? Is it a nation? Is it Elon Musk? Nobody knows. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that there's no real use for these cryptocurrency coins, but everybody likes the idea of for the people, by the people. I always say that gold is God's money, fiat currency is the government's money, and cryptocurrency is the people's money. And people got behind that, and so they started getting more and more excited. We entered into a new era. Now we start entering into the wild, wild west. We're around 2017, 2018, and everybody's launching their own currency. Every single celebrity and influencer, they're coming out with these coins that have no intrinsic value, no purpose, and no use, which you know that I'm big on, and there's no regulation. There's all kinds of room for bad actors to come into this space, and people are losing more than they're winning. Now, here's the problem. The problem is everybody knows somebody that got rich, mega wealthy because they bought some speculative coin at just the right time. The problem is for every one person that you hear about that became a crypto millionaire, 99 of them lost all of their money. If you think about it, in the world of the capital markets, in the stock market, there's regulation, there's compliance. If I want to take my company public, there's a roadmap, there's a checklist that you have to follow. You have to go get an audit up front. You have to, submit your filing to the SEC. Once you get approved, you have to be fully compliant when it comes to all things reporting. Crypto, none of it even exists. There's no clarity, there's no framework, there's no pathway forward, there's no accountability, which leads to no investor protection. And that's the reason perhaps you and many others have been sitting on the sidelines saying, man, I don't know if I want to get involved in crypto. There's so many different scams. Well, let's fast forward. 2021, 2022, we enter into a new era. It's called the slope of enlightenment. The innovators kept innovating, the builders kept building. We just came out of the crash of crypto. Remember, the fall of 2018, Bitcoin lost 95% of its value. Ethereum was right there with it. Well, the reason for that is because we hit that peak of hype, right? 2017, 18, and it all came crashing down. But the innovators kept innovating, the builders kept building, and that led to this new era. We started to see tokenization of real world assets. That conversation changed the game because now we're moving from hype and speculation to tangibility and substance. If you don't understand tokenization, think about it this way. You go buy a stock, you get a certificate of stock, a right of distribution, or a right of ownership in a company. Well, now think of going and buying cryptocurrency tokens that give you ownership in a high valued asset. You might not be able to buy that hotel, but now you can buy tokens that give you ownership in that hotel. Well, that's a big deal because now cryptocurrency is starting to grow up. And as that started to happen and it started to progress, more and more people started to come into crypto. Do you realize today, 28% of the entire United States population owns cryptocurrency? That's a huge deal. But everybody's been calling for a little bit of protection, clarity, accountability, framework. Even the cryptocurrency companies are saying, listen, give us some guidance here. You got to remember, from 2021 to 2024, we had a war against cryptocurrency here in the United States. The government, they didn't want to provide clarity. They didn't want to provide framework. Why? Because that would have meant progress. They didn't have their arms around it. They didn't have the ability to be able to track and tax. And so therefore, they didn't want to see progress. You had the banks that, man, they were seeing trillions of dollars that were exiting the traditional financial system. And that was a huge threat to them. And so, we went through this era where all of a sudden the lawsuits started happening. You had Coinbase, you had XRP, you had Binance. I even went through this myself. And now, here we are. And now we have a new administration, and they've made it very clear that they're committed to making the United States the crypto capital of the world. For that to happen, there has to be clarity. There has to be framework. And the first thing that they went after was the stablecoins. You had all of these stablecoins, right? These stablecoins that are supposed to be backed by a dollar. And yet, a lot of these coins that were out there didn't have the reserves to back the amount of token that was out there in the circulating supply. And so the first step was to pass the Genius Act that gave a requirement, it gave a structure, it gave policy to all of these different stablecoin companies that were out there. And that was a big deal. And that was the first step towards protection. They've made it very clear that regulation is coming. And now, even back today, as we speak, they're meeting on Capitol Hill to hopefully pass the crypto bill that gives a little bit more guidance on what is or what isn't a security. I've been a big advocate for a long time. Listen, if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. And at the end of the day, if you are trying to raise capital, if you are trying to tokenize an asset, it's a security, which means you need to go through a proper registration and a compliant process that holds the real world asset accountable that leads to investor protection on the other side. It's the reason why we built a layer 1 blockchain, the first in the entire world that baked in regulation and compliance when it comes to the onboarding so that the accountability is there. And so when we talk about the Genius Act, we talk about the crypto bill, all that's happening is we're moving into this new era of cryptocurrency. It's the next chapter. And quite frankly, I'm excited about it because it allows for true innovation. And now we're seeing all these meme coins, these hyped up projects starting to fade, and we're starting to see real substance come in. And we're seeing a paradigm shift that's now happening in the world of finance and banking, where we're seeing a lot of these companies that used to go to private equity, they used to go to the capital markets, now they're coming to blockchain and cryptocurrency. And over the next 5 to 10 years, there is going to be more opportunity in this space. My prediction is the greatest transfer of wealth that we have ever seen is going to happen inside of the world of blockchain. There's so much that's happening right now in the world of cryptocurrency. There's a lot to keep up on. And if you want some help, subscribe to the channel and I'll keep you informed.